All right. Well, welcome to the SAP Day 3. This is the third and final day of the first week of the SAP. It's been a week full of online presentations where we have tried our best to expose our participants, both students and staff, to all the opportunities to apply STEM education in business and the future of and saving the world and in getting ahead in life and making a fulfilling career and wherever your future takes you. Education's a huge part of that because that translates directly into the skills that you have, and that's really how you're of use to the rest of the world, and that's really what it's all about is having skills and being able to play a part on a team to solve the big problems that are in front of us. And I think our presenters did an excellent job so far over the last 2 days of sharing, at least topically, all the opportunities there are and the types of problems that they work on. Even if you haven't been able to really get your hands on too much of it, we did provide those few activities thus far, but I know it's far short of what's really needed. Um, so that's it. We've introduced the mentors. That is the experiential learning that we've been talking about, and the partnerships. These are all these folks that we've you know got to come on the schedule. And then even next month, we have a lot of industry partners that are going to come on. And in fact, our first guest today is one such person. I won't introduce him very much. He'll come on and tell you who he is here in just a second. But I just want to say that he was one early in the years that was in school when our program was really in its really early days, and he was able to go through the program, develop a certain skill set, and has been quite successful out in the wild in finding opportunities to apply those skills. And thankfully he's available for us today, and he's going to share a lot about that. But this is just to show one more of the resources, one more example for the students. And this is just one possible pathway. One of the many that we're sharing, and certainly for the rest of the program, we'll continue to do that as well. And I just want to share real quick. Um, I I told you that next month we're going to have a GIS day where all day we're really going to focus on the geospatial data and analysis. And as I said before, geospatial broadly is how we monitor and measure the real world. And the goal of GIS is to be able to create a representation of the real world that's as accurate as possible. Certainly, being able to describe the relevant layers that help you understand a problem like pollution or poverty. All these different layers of data in some way will inform why a problem is distributed like it is. We build certain things in a certain place in the city because it has attributes, physical attributes that make it easier to build, and there can be certain socio-demographic conditions in the area that also make it easier or harder to build certain projects. So um, representing the world with GIS is one way to understand problems. Certainly how they vary over time, and then we do a lot with drones and satellite data. And this is how we, from afar, are able to, kind of monitor over the whole world and keep track of what's going on. So when we think about big problems like climate change, that's temperature increasing over time or precipitation patterns changing over time. The question becomes, how is that impacting the environment that our land managers and our farmers are working to produce our food? And that's kind of our business and cooperative extension program. Is we are in some ways provide that education and research element for small farmers, beginning farmers, young farmers, low resource farmers that just simply don't have access to the tools and the technology and the experts that we have, but we make it our business to find opportunities to interact. And kind of this model of us here, here in this education setting, that's exactly the model that we use out in the real world with farmers and land managers. And then it also represents, later some of the opportunities, some of the ways that once you get your degree and your education, then you're able to get gainful employment and continue developing those skills and continue, helping people. And the science behind this, we're going to cover in depth on GIS Day. Uh, and then you'll certainly, when we're at the ERC, we'll have the drones and stuff there, and you'll get an opportunity to fly those and actually collect some of your own data, and then we'll talk about what you can do with that after. I won't talk about I won't talk about any of the science really just yet behind measuring the vegetation change in the earth. But suffice it to say that we're pretty much able to, there's so many satellites looking at the world all the time, and we're just measuring the light that's coming off of it. And we know how plants do photosynthesis. So however much light is not being reflected back out to space, it's being consumed by the plant for photosynthesis. And this is easily viewable from space. And for 30 or 40 years or longer, we've essentially just kind of been watching the world over time. That's why there's no question as to what changes are taking place on Earth today, because we're watching them, right? The tricky part is about what exactly the dynamics are and the what and the why specifically here and there. That's where the science comes in, because everywhere is case specific depending on where it's at in the world and what its particular geography is. But knowing how well the plant is photosynthesizing is very easy in a relative sense anyway. And that's what we do with the drones. We use these sensors, and the image I just showed was kind of looking at the whole world, but the drones are just 400 or 500 feet above the ground, and they can see in much greater detail, even down to individual crops and plants. And you do this repetitively over time, and you create a record. So where just before that was a 25-year time lapse of vegetation greening and contracting on an annual basis over that time, well, now we're doing the same thing in high definition for farms. And you can see here, this is many square miles, many square miles. And I have tons of examples. So this very presentation that I'm giving, this is my most popular one. This is when I go out and I just want to share the successes that we've had at KSU in adopting this technology and in finding cool ways to apply it. And further, the reason I bring it up here is that every project involves students, okay? Every project involves students. Now, this is a newer presentation, and I don't have much of Mr. Garrison's work in here, but I have one of the pictures or one of the posters that we presented at a conference. I don't know if it's DC or Atlanta, but for the Associate Research Directors Conference, which is a big deal that happens every 2 years. And this is where we take our best and brightest students, and we put them on stage and they present the type of work that they do. And they are working on projects that are relevant to what the scientists and the researchers are working on at KSU. So they're applying this technology to be able to measure the height difference or the photosynthetic activity difference of real farmland. And this helps farmers, figure out how their crops are doing over time, either in response to their management activities or in response to a changing climate. And we just have tons and tons and tons of examples of where we just connected with constituents that have real problems in farming or land management, and and this is how we get the money, and this is the opportunity that we have to involve all of the students uh, in our work. So I hope I didn't take too much time there. What I'd like to do, Mr. Garrison, if you're ready, uh, if you could come on, I'd like to. We offer Mr. Garrison as one example. He's a former student. He graduated a couple of years ago, and from the I guess environmental studies department. And you can share those details. And we really just want to. I definitely want to know what you're up to lately, and be sure to share what parts of the program broadly at KSU equipped you to to be successful today. So feel free to share however you like, sir. And thank you for
Okay,
being here.
great. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I think we hear you good, sir.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here. This is the first time that I've had the opportunity to speak with everybody or to speak after graduating. And like I mentioned before, like Jeremy has just mentioned, it was a great opportunity and a great experience being at the KSU. Um, in graduating, I learned so much from being there. Jeremy, Dr. Gawali, all of the professors there, particularly the program that we were in. Learning about GIS, doing all of the research projects and performing them. I mean, presenting them all throughout the country in DC and Atlanta, Kentucky Academy of Science, posters at the Capitol. It was just an amazing opportunity. Um, I guess I can just start uh, with the experience that I've had starting off at the Environmental Protection Agency. That was like the first internship that I had. I think it was in 2015. Uh, I got to K State in 2013. So I got in K State in 2013. And my first internship was at the EPA, the headquarters in DC, at the Office of Public Engagement. And and then from there, um, a professor that was working in the extension build. I don't remember his name, but he helped me get an internship at the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and that was also in DC. And and there we helped agricultural workers get in contact with like their political representatives on Capitol Hill, and that was a great insight for me to kind of just see a lot of the issues and the problems that a lot of the agricultural workers and the farmers they were having with the you know with drought, just with all of the concerns that they were having, and just getting their voices heard on a national and political like platform. So that was awesome. Um,
Yeah, let me jump in and ask you real quick, DeAndre. You have to remind me what year that you graduated, and I guess it took
oh,
you 4 years to get through and graduated. But then the question is, to work into your story here, how how soon into your college career did you start, I guess, developing these skills or knowing that this was kind of the trajectory you got on or were headed on? And then that second question, you were just sharing some of your advocacy work, and then I was already wondering about how translatable what you discovered in Kentucky was to once you got to DC working on the national level. So
right.
that's a lot there, but feel free to just share that stuff however you like.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Got to K State in 2013, and I was brought on by Dr. Selichek in I want to say like the spring semester of my freshman year, and I was working in an entomology lab at Atwood, the old building Atwood. I don't know if it's finished yet, but when I was there, it was going through reconstruction, and I was like there on the last like year that it was like up and running. But I was working in an entomology lab, and I for some reason I walked into like the extension building, and I was like, what is this building? And I was just like walking around, and I was just seeing like all this cool stuff. and I got introduced to Dr. Gawali, and he allowed for me to he be I told Dr. Selichek that I wanted to transfer to what he was doing, and that was my introduction into like GIS. That was my introduction because I was just seeing like the stuff that was going on over here was just so much cooler to me personally than just collecting a lot of like insects and things like that. Not to say it's not cool, but for me that was just like really cool. And I guess the next question that you were saying is like how DC and the comparison between DC and Kentucky. So for me, it was definitely a culture shock to kind of be in Kentucky comparison to DC. DC is just a lot more faster, and like you mentioned before, like on a national level, it's very political. It's very political, and all of the work that that is being done is it has less to do with science and more of, like I mentioned before, like the political aspect of what's going on in the country, or like voting on different concerns that people may have. But in Kentucky, like a lot of the work that we were doing, it was just really just hands-on scientific work, whether or not we're at like the research farm doing different experiments. Um, and that was just the difference between kind of like DC and on a national level.
Okay. Yeah, I was also asking about. I guess I was trying to get at kind of the types of problems that were being worked on, like loss of agricultural land, for example, or the sprawl of urban environments, kind of the arguments. But you actually you answered even a better point about transitioning. So you took your STEM degree, and when you graduated, what, 2018,
Yeah, I graduated
2017?
20, yeah,
And
2018.
then
It took.
so you've already kind of transcended now, moving out of a lot of the focus on just the numbers and the maps, and now you're what, having bigger conversations about what, the policy stuff, and deciding what the goals for all of us should be. And feel feel
Well,
free to clear that.
like I've the experience that I've had was I've kind of jumped around a lot. Like in the beginning, when I first got down, when I first so when I got to school, and like all of the internships that I were doing, they were less scientific, and they were just more on like decision making. And now, like in my professional career, there's more scientific. And I don't know if it's because of like the funding, or I just feel like maybe it was a, I think past administrations really weren't really focused on climate change, environment, things like that. I think after kind of like the Obama administration, climate change and environment and just scientific issues just wasn't like the focal point of like the economy and the world as a whole. And I feel like probably um, I feel like now there's more that. So I feel like in my professional career, like that is something that is more like people they want to see, especially when you look at like the pandemic and um, just everything that's going on with like uh, health and climate change and the environment. They want to kind of make more decisions. They want to kind of create answers to a lot of the problems that they're having as far as that. Um, but I'll continue with kind of the trajectory of my career. So EPA, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. Um, then I guess let me pull up like, okay. Then after that, I had the opportunity of working. Where the heck did I work after that? I want to say okay. So my first job after college, I don't remember the other internships, right? But after college, my first job after college was as a map specialist for FEMA in the National Flood Insurance Program, and there I was kind of responsible for like kind of like analyzing like floodplains and addressing questions to the public about whether or not like their properties was in flood waters, like areas that were like susceptible to like flooding and things like that. and that was a great opportunity and everything. So then I left from there and I started working at the Census Bureau, the headquarters of the Census Bureau, as a geographer, and that was working during like the 2020 decennial period, and that was a great opportunity. Like I think that was my first opportunity where I was like kind of like immersed in just so much work and just so much data, and I kind of just met like so many other geographers. It was just like a great opportunity. Then from
And
there, okay.
let me just jump in real quick to keep it. Uh, Students that are on here, especially over the last couple of days, we brought on some students that were currently engaged at the university who were working in the research programs with the various professors that were talking, and now we have DeAndre, who is pretty recently removed still out of education and has already had this big complicated work story already. So please, this is a great opportunity to unmute yourself and ask any questions. Some of you folks that are on here, I see that graduated already from Shawnee High School and have already been accepted to KSU and are thinking about which area to choose. Uh, so, not that I want to cut off your career story, DeAndre, but to pull it back to these students in particular that have graduated already. Uh, they all have interest in stuff already. And Sophie, feel free to unmute and just ask your question. And what can you give them? I guess because I hear that you've done this really wonderful stuff. So you know I don't know. Let's just see. Sophie, do you have a question?
If there was something that you could do differently, what would you have done?
That's a great question,
Yeah,
Sophie.
thank you, Sophie.
I think the biggest thing that got me to this point was just believing in myself. When I got to K State, I was admitted on condition. Like my grades in high school were horrible, and I had to go through the summer program at KSU. They used to have it. I don't know if they still have it, but the summer program was like if I passed the summer program at KSU, then I would be admitted to KSU. And I think KSU was like one of the only schools that I got admitted to, and that's when I started like taking school really seriously then. And I think the only thing that I would have regretted is like not taking it serious sooner. And then also another thing that I wish that I would have kind of done is realizing that it takes a lot more to being smart. Like even though being smart is really important, being versatile is really important. Um, you have to have skill. Like you have to have a skill. Like that is the only thing that will make you marketable. Like what are you good at? You can't just say that I'm really smart and I have like all A's and everything like that. I mean, even though that's really good, but you have to have a skill, whether or not like it's a skill in GIS, whether or not it's a skill in biology, you're a chemist or just anything. But what is your skill? Like, what are you good at?
Like a
And
hustle?
even if it was a hustle, like I just feel like in today's day and age, like being smart, yeah, that's good, but I just feel like there are not as many opportunities for people that are just brilliant, smart. You just have to be good at extremely good at what it is that you do. Yeah, and taking it extremely serious. I don't like I've realized that there were kind of a point in my life where I kind of didn't take education as serious as I do now. Like I'm currently like still reading like books, like I still educate myself on the things that passionate me, like and to be a life learner, like you never stop learning. Like when you graduate, you'll always be learning, like and to be a self learner. Like when you develop that skill, that is going to take you really, really far. Like when you can figure out how to teach yourself things without having a professor, without having a teacher, that is when you'll be very successful. Like, you have to be determined and disciplined.
Mr. Coles, did you want to throw a question out there?
Good morning, DeAndre. This is Jeff Coles with the Academy at Tea Garden, and we have a student here. He's an elementary student, but he's very interested in what you had to say, and he has a question.
What is GIS? What is GIS?
Oh, GIS,
Yes.
Geographic Information System.
What happened? I'm gonna share the screen.
We have one more question.
Oh,
Here's an example, because GIS Day is next month. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but as an example of the work that me and DeAndre did together in the past, here's one of his projects from pretty far back. But DeAndre, just walk us through real quick. The GIS part is obviously the kind of the mapping element, but just in 2 minutes, do you remember doing this project at Bernheim, using the drone, mapping out for invasive species, and then using the
oh
map
yeah.
to identify the locations of it and all?
Yeah, you've made some changes to the poster, but yeah, I definitely remember it. That's when we use the spectral signature to identify the invasive species, and it goes back to what you mentioned before about how light absorbs and reflects things at different frequencies, and with that, we were able to identify the invasive species within the forest. So yeah, that was amazing work that we did. Also, I remember at the cemetery when we identified unmarked burial sites. That was cool work too. Um, yeah, I mean the possibilities with GIS are just endless, and they continue to be more and more to solve more and more problems.
Yeah, I probably should have did a better job of defining it and setting you up a lot better. But me and Mr. Garrison actually just made this deal yesterday and got him on the schedule, just because I was going to be talking about this little bit of stuff. But the GIS is the software that makes all this possible, and it's kind of the computer system and the software and the user and the technology, the drone. And what you're doing is applying it to solve people's problems. So here we've used the drone to measure, change in photosynthesis over time, and you simply take the difference between the two, and you have a map that shows, what's happening on the surface. And that's what GIS is, Geographic Information System. The geographic meaning that it's pegged to a location. Here it's latitude, longitude, but it could be an address or a town or whatever, depending on what your scale of analysis is. And it's just all about comparing stuff. So here you can compare individual crops and how much they grew over 1 month time. And there's a map on the right hand side that represents that change over time. And these are just the methods that are applied, and whatever the problems are you're working on, the methods can be very similar. So before we run out of time, DeAndre, oh yeah, I'm sorry, did I miss somebody's question there?
Yeah, we had one more question. This is
Yes, sir, please.
Speak up.
Hello. My name is Annabelle, and I go to Tate Street Middle School. And I have a question. My question is, how do you learn more as a self-learner?
Reading, finding something that you're interested in and exploring that. Continue to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid or be embarrassed, or don't fear rejection. Don't fear failure. Just constantly want to learn. Have like when you're like super duper hungry and you feel like you can just eat uncontrollably, you need to have that same attitude when it comes to learning. You can't get enough of it. Like, every waking moment you want to be just learning more about what it is that you're passionate in. Whether it's GIS or whether it's anything, um that is how you learn. That is how you that is how you become an expert in your field. That is how you become successful at what it is that you want to do. I don't know too many successful people that don't practice or that don't continue to push themselves to be better and better at what it is that they do.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I agree wholeheartedly. Any other questions from any of the staff? Some of you folks are on here. You will remember DeAndre from being around.
Mr. Sandifer, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I'm really interested in DeAndre's journey to Kentucky State, as he had mentioned that he didn't have very good grades in high school. He hadn't developed the study skills and habits in high school, but how K-State kind of developed him. Can you talk a little bit more about that, DeAndre? How you came in, kind of challenged, but over time and with a great mentor at Kentucky State, how they developed you?
It takes the it's have you heard the saying, it takes a village? So now as a young adult, I'm really looking at kind of the trajectory of my life, and I'm starting to like reflect on my life and my career and just where I'm at right now in my life. And I realized that before actually being admitted into KSU, I didn't have I didn't have the proper environment for me to become the person that I wanted to be. Like, if you're surrounded by, or better yet, I guess, like, some is a quote that I seen. It was like, show me your friends or show me the people that you hang around, and and I can tell you how your future's going to be. So a lot of my teachers before, not and teachers don't actually have to be in school. Just a lot of the people that I was around, whether or not that was family, whether or not it was just people that I was coming in contact with, the brain is like a sponge. So before I was I was I was learning a lot of like negative behavioral traits. And then when I kind of left my hometown and I was just totally by myself, and the environment that I was in was it was a perfect environment to become a scholar. Like, that is who I became. And it just takes the proper environment. You are a product of your environment. Like, being at KSU, working with Jeremy, working with all the other professors, like, it allowed for me to take characteristics, and like it allowed for me to kind of like develop into somewhat of a person that I wanted to be. Like, just seeing how hard Jeremy works, just seeing what Dr. Gawali and all the other like professors were doing, it just inspired me. And then being able to learn and doing all the research projects, taking trips, winning awards, it really did a lot for my self-esteem. And it was just it was just the it was just the amount of like encouragement and the development that I needed. Like, I would not be where I'm at today if I would have never met Jeremy, met Dr. Gawali, left DC and went to Kentucky. I would have never been there. Like, you have to surround yourself around like-minded people, or you won't make it. Like, if you're doing something that's really, really good and all you hang around is really, really bad people, those really bad people are going to kind of influence you into doing negative things. So you just have to want it. And that's what I wanted. I really, really wanted it bad. And that's what I have now. Like, I don't have everything, but I'm kind of on a path to doing some great things.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. We got one more if we can, Mr. Sandifer.
Yes,
One
yes,
more.
sir. Yeah, please. And DeAndre, thank you for that. And I just want to add, while it's our job to provide the opportunity, and but we can't, really like make it happen. It's 100% on the student. But I heard him say 5 times it was all about the environment that's set up. And KSU is a smaller place, and we have a lot more freedoms than you would expect. And we just really have an embarrassment of riches and opportunities that are available to us. So like he was talking about, the conferences, the travels, the opportunity to get to work in some of these places that don't even exist in other places. This, and there's only a short window where these things are open and available to you. If I meet you in another time in life, I'm not as equipped, to be helpful to you. No one is. So DeAndre, thank you very much for sharing that. And yes, sir, Mr. Coles, go ahead with your.
Yeah, first of all, my name is Tony Wilson, and I'm, camp coordinator. Jeremy, good seeing you as well. DeAndre, man, I'm sitting back taking notes, and I'm taking back someone who's older than most of you guys. But young man, you're an inspiration. You laid out so many nuggets today, and I'm hoping it's something that we can use. I can share with our young people and ingrain in them. I've been a mentor for a long time, and so to hear your story, to hear the highs and lows. You mentioned environment, and again, I'm loving what we're talking about right now, and so hopefully we can merge this conversation with our young people. So again, I just want to thank you for sharing, and hopefully we can use those nuggets not only today but down the road as well. So just thank you guys. We certainly appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. When Jeremy told me about this yesterday, it was something that I had to make time for because I could remember being younger, and I would always go to kind of ceremonies where there would be people like I'm doing now speaking about things, and I really wouldn't even pay it any attention most of the time, but I mean, sometimes I would listen, but what I really would encourage to people that are a few years behind me is just take it super duper serious and manifest it. Like a lot of the interviews and stuff that I watch with successful people, everything that they haven't most generally time the thing that they have in common is that they all said that one day they would be where they was at. Like even they would people say, I was dirt poor, I didn't have a dollar to my pocket, but I always knew that before I left this planet that I was going to do X, Y, and Z. And it just so happened, you just have to manifest it and believe it. Um and and just take and just don't let this opportunity slip through your hands. And another thing that's really important is you have to go, you have to leave. Like you have to go where the opportunity is. Like you have to go where opportunity is. Like I do not feel like I would have had all the opportunities that I've had if I would have stayed in one place. If I would have just stayed in Kentucky, there would be no way that I would have the opportunities I would be. You have to leave. You have to have enough. You have to take risks, like take risks, and you have to have enough like belief in yourself and get out of your comfort zone because it's not going to be easy. Like you can't just do things because you feel like this is a safe way to go. Like those type of people generally don't go really far. You have to go where there's opportunities at. So that's another gem that I had for people. Like um yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, if I could, this is David Neville.
Yes,
So,
sir. David Neville. Everybody should know him. Half of our participants are here on behalf of his outreach and encouragement, and he's a great partner for us. And yeah,
so,
Dave, please.
yeah. So addressing the issue of and DeAndre, you just tremendous young man. So,
Thank you.
but addressing that issue about being ready for college or not, and the programs and that sort of thing. So, not really on behalf of KSU, but from my observations, is that since it's a smaller school, as has been referenced here, you just get a different feel for it. But also, two specific programs for young folks that may not be ready for college is the pre-college academy, and that happens in the fall or late summer prior to actually the fall semester beginning. And that's a 5-week program that gives entering freshmen a taste of college. And so it kind of sets you up for success. And then the other thing is, depending on your GPA and that sort of thing, if you're not quite ready for college, but you really, really want to go, there is something called the Excel program. And that's really a 2-year based associate program that you get some extra attention, if you will, extra mentorship, extra counseling, and all that sort of thing. So if there are young folks out there that say, I don't know if I can do college, let's talk about those two programs in particular. Thanks.
We have an opportunity next week to be on campus. The first stop is campus for what we have scheduled for next week. And I hate to drop the bad news right here, but it looks like the rain may mess us up for our next planned day. But what we can do is do a lot more stuff on campus and get some of these questions answered, especially for the folks that have graduated already. And Dr. Owens too had also listed a lot of additional opportunities that everybody on the call today has access to, all the way from the middle school students all the way up to those of you that have graduated. Some of them are ongoing, but there's there's still emphasis on just getting everybody connected in every possible way. But again, it's really on the student to reach out and say, I want to be helped and I want to be involved, and we really want you to take advantage of that as the moral of that. So thank you, David, for sharing that. And any more questions or closing thoughts for DeAndre? We're going to let him go. I think I'm sure he's got stuff going on. And DeAndre too, if you have any closing, you shared a lot and I really appreciate everything you said, but feel free to sign off in some way or whatever. And if anybody wants to unmute and say anything, I'll check the chat one last time just to make sure there's no questions in there.
Okay. In closing, I would like to just thank everybody for listening to this, listen to what it is that I have to say, listen to my story. I hope these words reach the people that need them right now, or the most. I hope they reach them in good spirits. I hope that they really listen to what it is that I have to say. I feel like what kind of separated me and really had me thinking about my future was thinking about leaving a legacy and building a reputation. Like, what does the next 10 years of your life look like? Like, you have to ask your questions like, what you have to, and more so than that, you have to kind of like develop a brand. Like, how does your resume look? Like, what have you accomplished? And you don't, I mean, yes, you kind of like have faith in the people, your mentors, the people that are helping you and things like that. But you have to be an individual and you have to build up a reputation for yourself, whatever that is, like independent research. Like you don't always need somebody to hold your hand. Like go out there and figure out what it is that you like to do. And that's what you should do. You don't need somebody to constantly tell you, okay, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. You go out there and find that for yourself. And I think that's what kind of separated me from a lot of my colleagues, is that I was a go-getter and I stayed in the library long, or I stayed in the GIS lab longer, or I didn't wait for my professors to be like, hey, here's an internship. I was always constantly looking for internships because I always knew that when you leave college, they, more than your grades, they look at your work experience. Like, so you have to kind of balance the two. So if you're doing an amazing, you have great GPAs, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be applying to internships, so that when it comes time for you to go get a real job, that you have some experience to fall back on. And yeah, Jeremy, he can teach you a lot. Yeah, Dr. Gawali can teach you a lot. Yeah, David Neville, he can like help you with all of the programs that you need. Yeah, you have like tons of mentors, but you have to want that yourself. And that's what I'll say to
Yeah,
like end
that,
this point.
and that's perfect.
Thanks, guys.
That's perfect. Find something and choose something and go after it. And just to pull it back to the structure of the program, that's what it is. That's how we've built the schedule. We've just asked all these folks who represent these different areas to come and introduce themselves and introduce their area. Try to give you a taste of it, and if you connect, you know, they're willing to keep going as far as you want to go. And you know, and DeAndre, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your story. And man, we may try to set something up in July and try to get a bunch of students back. We've had several students on already, and maybe it'll be fun at the very end. Maybe we'll get a day and we'll get all of you on there and hopefully get some questions submitted beforehand and all. But thank you very much. We'll give you a virtual round of applause. If I could find the button, I can't, but
All right, thanks,
believe that's
Jeremy.
what I was
Thanks,
doing.
everybody.
All right, thank you, man. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
I can't hear you.
Thank you very much. Good. All right. Any questions or comments? Feel free to blurt and jump it out of there. We have still on the schedule before our break. I guess we have roughly about an hour. So we have two sets of presenters. Number one, you know, next week on Tuesday, we are scheduled to go out to the EERC and do a handful of activities and have lunch and stuff out there. But as I mentioned, the rain may be an issue, so we're going to be thinking about how we may be able to change that, and we'll all stay in close communication with each other and see how that forecast shakes out over the next couple of days. But we've asked them on today to introduce themselves and to share a little bit about what it is that they do out there and what the EERC is, you know, as far as the role it serves in our university. And then they have a lot of resources already, videos that are related to the different activities or the different areas that they manage out at the farm. So even beyond the presentations that they're going to deliver, hopefully we can share all the links to a lot of good stuff that they have out there already. They've been really busy this past year in generating a lot of opportunities for folks to take part in what they have going on out there. And then after, we have one of our research partners, Miss Maynard, and she's going to share some tools that she's built, and more importantly, we have a survey that she's going to introduce, and we really want to get that thing completed for her so that next month, whenever we have our GIS day, we'll be able to represent a lot of the data that was given by the participants here. So we'll see how that goes, but she's going to introduce these tools and this work and share a little bit about the work that she does. So we can follow the schedule. Ms. Guti, if you were ready, or your team, yeah, I see you there. Feel free to share your screen. You should have access. And
yeah, I'll give Ian a second to pull up that presentation and share it for everybody. But yeah, thanks. I'm Caitlin Goatee. I'm an environmental educator for Kentucky State University's Environmental Education Research Center. I'm joined today by Ian Rees, who also is an environmental educator. And we're going to talk a little bit today about some background information on macroinvertebrate sampling, which is what we are planning on you guys doing next week, as long as we don't get rained out. I know you mentioned those thunderstorms, and hopefully those hold off, but we'll see. So if we go ahead and move on to the next slide. So we are going to be sampling from 6 Mile Creek at the EERC. It is a creek that runs all the way through the EERC. and it eventually empties into the Kentucky River. So just to start us off, I want to talk a little bit about what benthic macroinvertebrates are. So if we break down each part of the term, benthic refers to the organisms that live in the bottom of water bodies, like streams, lakes, all that kind of stuff. Macro just kind of refers to organisms that we can see with our naked eye. We don't have to use a microscope in order to see these organisms. And invertebrate means that they just don't have a backbone. So if we put all of those together, we're looking for organisms that we can see with the naked eye that do not have a backbone and live in the bottom of these water bodies. And so our three main groups that we have that we're going to be looking at are our pollution intolerant species, species that can exist within a wide range of conditions, and our pollutant tolerant species. So this is really important because if we take our sample and we look and we find a lot of pollution intolerant species, but maybe not so many pollution tolerant species, what that's going to indicate is that we have very good stream health in that sample. We can also take physical and chemical data about the water quality, but one really nice advantage of this biological data is that it gives us a really good idea of the long-term health of that water body. So that kind of begs the question, why do we monitor water quality? So the water quality is really important to kind of monitor because if that water quality degrades, not only is it going to impact the organisms living in that specific habitat, but it's also going to affect everything downstream. So I mentioned earlier that the 6 Mile Creek actually empties into the Kentucky River. So right now, one of our biggest pollution threats at 6 Mile Creek is agricultural runoff. So that's going to include things like livestock waste. It's going to include pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and all of that could potentially wash into that waterway. And it's not going to stop there. It's going to continue traveling downstream into the Kentucky River. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. So this is just showing some of the materials that we're going to need in order to take our sample. So we're going to start off with our D-frame net. So when we actually do our demonstration next week, we're going to use a triangle dip net with a canvas shroud instead of a D-frame net, which is going to be fine. It's going to serve the same purpose. The biggest thing right with that one is that it has this flat bottom, and that is so we can put it flush to the bottom of the stream so we catch everything that's going to wash into that. We're also going to use a bucket. That's what we're going to empty what we catch in our net into, and then everything from that bucket is going to go into our collection bin. And then from there, we're going to sort everything from our collection bin into those ice cube trays. So each individual organism that we find is going to get its own little spot in that ice tray. We're going to use tweezers and plastic forceps to handle the macroinvertebrates. We do have little magnifying glasses that we can use because some of these guys are really small and we just want to make sure that we are correctly identifying them. And some of them, it can be a little difficult. Some of them look kind of similar. So that's just a tool to help us out. We're also going to provide everybody with the identification keys so we make sure that we correctly identify what it is exactly that we're looking at. And even if you can't tell what you're looking at in the field, you can also take a 70 to 80% alcohol solution in a sample jar to preserve any macros that you may not be able to identify in the field, but you can take it home and back to a lab space and kind of further look at it there. So if we move on to the next slide. Another important thing is before entering any kind of stream, it's really important to remember these safety tips. Water can be very deceiving, especially if there's a strong current. So it may look like calm on the surface, but there may be faster moving water underneath that you just can't see. So you want to make sure that you are moving very slowly. You do not want to rush yourself. Some of the rocks can also be very slick. So instead of taking individual steps, we want everybody to kind of shuffle your feet along the bottom of the stream, kind of slide 1 foot ahead of you at a time and make sure that you have a firm foothold before you try to move your other foot. With that said, you also never want to put your feet between 2 rocks. You definitely don't want to get your foot stuck. We're gonna have you guys in shallower water, but if the situation arises that you have to wade into deeper or faster moving water, just make sure to wade with your feet and your body perpendicular to the direction the water is moving, and that's going to lessen your chances of getting swept off your feet by underwater currents. And as always, you're also going to want to make sure that you are wearing your protective equipment, and this is going to include things like your sunscreen, your bug spray, waders, muck boots, and if it makes you feel more comfortable, wear a life jacket. There is no shame in that. And with that, we are going to pass it on over to Ian.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Ian. I work with Caitlin at the EERC. So we're just going to continue on with our presentation here. So when we collect macroinvertebrates, we've got to identify them to be able to tell what they are, obviously. So there's many different ways you can do this. In the field, we'll have paper keys that we can look through. And then you can also, there's some cool online resources. This one is really cool, macroinvertebrates.org. You go to the website and it's got everything separated by order here. So you got beetles, stoneflies, mayflies. But when you click on any of those orders, it'll take you into a sort of a dichotomous key that you can look at the different organisms, and it's really helpful, helps you determine what you're looking at. All right, and so just to mention the life cycle, so all of these macroinvertebrates that we're looking for, all the different flies and beetles, when they're in the water, they're going to be in their larval or nymph stage. And so there's two different metamorphoses that insects go through. And so one is complete metamorphosis, one is incomplete metamorphosis. And during complete metamorphosis, that's when you have, you know, an egg and a larva. And the difference really is that they look completely different from when they're a larva to when they're an adult. And so incomplete metamorphosis, when they're a nymph, which is the younger version, they pretty much look the same, they're just smaller. And so when we're looking for macros, we're going to be looking for either the larva or the nymph stage. So ones that look like this, ones that look like this. All right, and all of these insects can be split into functional feeding groups. And this is important to know just because based on what they eat will tell you where you're more likely to find them in the stream. So there's collectors, which collect things like dead organisms and detritus. There's grazers that graze through the water for algae and biofilm. Shredders, which will shred leaves and woody debris, you know, the bigger debris, they'll break it down. And then predators, which will go after prey organisms. So if we take that information and look at the different parts of a stream, you get a bigger picture, a better idea of what you're looking for. So when you're sampling for macroinvertebrates, your sample area ideally should be between 100 and 300 meters. So you want a larger area so you get all these different parts of the stream, so that you can get a complete picture of what's living there. So some important parts of the stream to look for are riffles. That's water that runs faster and is agitated by rocks. So that's this part here. When you think of like a babbling brook, that would be a riffle where the water is flowing and it's getting mixed up and moving pretty fast. A pool is water that's deeper and runs slower. Right here, pretty self-explanatory. A run, so it's the main body of water that runs smoothly downstream. So that'll be between the other parts of the stream, you know, just water that's moving right along. And then we can also look under vegetation overhangs and bank overhangs. And so that's along the bank where the current has cut out underneath the plants that are in the riparian zone on top, and it'll hang over the water. And you can find different macros depending on where you're looking at. So if you look up here around a flood, we won't be looking in a floodplain, but you can find things like frogs, birds, plankton up in a floodplain. We'll be in the stream looking more like in this backwater area. So we won't be collecting any fish, but we'll probably see fish. Midge larvae will collect, aquatic worms, if they're there, will collect. And then in the riffles, you find minnows and stoneflies and caddisflies and blackflies. And then different things again in the pool, where pools are usually where the larger ones will hang out because it's easier to move around and there's not so much current. Caitlin, I
Right,
forgot where I'm
so-
supposed to stop.
You're good. So as Ian mentioned before, our sample site is going to have to stretch somewhere between 100 meters and 300 meters. And within that stretch, we're going to need to make at least 3 different 3-foot by 5-foot sample areas. Usually those are going to be around the riffles that we are going to then take our sample in. And the reason that we take these multiple samples from different sections is to get a clearer picture of what's going on in that specific habitat. So, you know, the more data that we collect, the more accurate our results are going to be. So we're going to go over a biological monitoring assessment report here in a second, just to kind of get you guys acquainted with the documentation for this. So it's not so much of a surprise when we see it next week. At the top is going to ask us for additional information about different conditions in the habitat that's going to affect our sample that we take. And so this is going to include stuff like the flow rate, the temperature of the water, the pH of the water, the turbidity, the salinity, but we're also going to have to take note of the area around our sampling site. So we're going to be looking at things like our riparian zone, the depth of the water, the width of the stream, whether or not there's significant canopy cover in the areas that we've decided to test, if there's cloud cover on that day, if it's rained recently, that kind of stuff. And so all of this information is going to help us get a better idea of what kind of conditions these macroinvertebrates are living in and what we're going to expect to find. And so next week, we're going to walk through how to perform a kick test and how to collect the sample. But here, we're just going to talk briefly about recording the data. So we'll take a look at that at the next slide. Okay, so this is our data collection sheet. We are going to fill out all of this. One of the most important things is to fill out the stuff at the top, especially your name and your phone number. And that is so once this data is sent off, if whoever is assessing this data needs more information on the sample that you collected, they're going to have somebody that they're going to be able to contact and get more information on that sample. And so once we sort out all of our macros, we're going to have to identify what we're looking for and record that information under the macroinvertebrate tally, those 3 columns there in the middle of the page. And so each of these organisms that are listed in this table over here, they belong to a specific group or a taxon. So we're going to have to tally up all of the taxa that we find by that we end up collecting, and we're going to put a tally mark next to each of the taxa present. So even if we find maybe like 4 aquatic worms and 3 freshwater clams, we're only going to put 1 tally mark for each of those things, because this isn't by the number of organisms that we find, but the classification that these organisms are under. So if we take a look at the next slide, here are some of the pictures from a sample that we took in a previous year. I think this is actually from last year. These are some of the organisms that we found in our sample. So we've got our crayfish, we've got some gilled snails, we've got water pennies, mayfly nymphs, the dobsonfly larva, which is really cool to look at. Those are also called helgrammites. We have some aquatic worms, dragonfly nymphs, and cranefly larvae, and a lot of freshwater clams. And with those, Ian is going to tell us a little bit how to record all of those organisms onto our data sheet.
Yeah, so like Caitlin said, you'll fill out the top part before you start, your name, phone number, information about your study site. And then under this general description of water conditions, this is where you'll put things like any recent major rain events, what the weather's doing, average flow, if the water's up, if it's flowing fast, if it's flowing slow. You can put information about the riparian zone in there, if the water is shaded. And all of this helps to just characterize the habitat a little bit better. And then so once you collect all your macros and identify them, I think we got a question here. How long of a record currently exists for the ERC in this format? So we've been doing at least one of these a year since we've been around. So I'd say probably 4 or 5 years now, we've probably got this data going on, and it's been pretty consistent. It's not really changed much. So that's good. But so once you collect all of your macros and you identify them, you'll, like Caitlin said, you'll mark a tally for everyone that you find. And then so like here for this group 1 taxa, we found water pennies, so there's a mark, mayflies, a mark, Dobson fly, there's a mark, and then other snails, there's a mark. So in total, we found 4 of these species within the taxa. So there's 4 down here, and then you multiply that 4 by the index value for the taxa, which is 3, so you get a total of 12. And you'll do the same for the other 2, and this index value here is lower as you go farther down towards the more tolerant species, because the more intolerant species you have, the cleaner the water is going to be, because they can survive there. So they have more weight when you're tallying up your totals here. So we end up with 12, 8, and 1. You add it together, you get a 21, and then you compare it to the scale, which puts it in the good category. And that's pretty consistent. Every time we've done this at the ERC, we get somewhere between 20 and 25 here. So we'll see if we're able to do this next week. We'll see what our results are and see if it's changed at all. And so that's what we're going to do. That's pretty much it. Here are some resources here that you can find. This first link, this will take you to the Kentucky Water Watch data collection sheet identification key. It'll give you a PDF of this form here if you want to do it yourself. And the Kentucky Water Watch is a citizen science program, so you can sign up with them and do this on your own in streams in your own community and send them the data. Caitlin's dropping all these links in the chat. And then there's a federal resource for macro sampling, just instructions on how to do it. And then there's Kentucky resources. The Kentucky resources give you a bit more specific information on how to do it in Kentucky. And then this last link is at macrovertebrates.org, that online key that'll help you identify. And then, so my name's Ian. There's my email on the right here. We've been talking with Caitlin. Her email's on the left here. If you have any questions, if you want to come out to the ERC anytime, we'd love to have students out there. Anybody that's interested in environmental education, we love to host people. So that's our presentation. If you have any questions or comments, we're here.
Yep, very cool. Thank you very much for that. That whole activity about macro invertebrate sampling to ascertain what the water quality is. I really like that activity because we spend a lot of time talking about technology and advanced sensors and equipment that costs a lot of money to measure these same things. And there's this idea called appropriate technology, and it doesn't always have to be, you know, some device or whatever. There's a real kind of folk knowledge ingrained out in the wild, you know, and it's not all technology all the time, I guess is what I'm getting at. And there's a lot of different opportunities, and in a lot of our works with farmers and other land managers, we actually see some examples of them doing very non-sophisticated seemingly things to accomplish a big problem, you know, to control erosion or water flow or whatever. So at Thelma's Academy, they're doing a lot of outdoor stuff. So whenever, as you continue to, you know, encounter each of your problems about how to get water to this particular plant, or you know, what to do about too much energy at a certain time of the day, the solutions can oftentimes be something that's not very technologically advanced, you know. So yeah, thank you. So give them a big virtual round of applause. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. He does say, while all that's true, they do use a lot of technology to measure lots of things, and that's certainly true. And the two go very much hand in hand, right? So we would be proving on one hand, and then seeing what happens in the real world. So very cool. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat or to unmute yourself. And thank you very much for that. Miss Maynard, if you are ready, she's going to discuss a little bit about some technology, and let me just say in a second that part of our data collection and observation activities out at the EERC, we're also relying on some other technology to record it. So they shared a form that they have specific to their operation. But how might you, let's suppose that you did a project and you had 100 sites instead of just the EERC, there were a different 100 different locations where you were trying to do this and everybody was wanting to collaborate, right? You would need some kind of a medium to share all your information and to collect all of your respective observations and then be able to share them out with the rest of the world, right? Because we don't just do this by ourselves. So some of the information that she's going to go over is exactly that type of opportunity. So while we'll be showing you a product that's already been built, she's going to share some tools where if you were so inclined, you could develop your own technology to be able to facilitate a more collaborative data sharing kind of thing. So you computer science folks, while computer science, they develop these things from scratch, there's half of technology or products that are already developed that could just be used in new and interesting ways. So I'll stop there and welcome Ms. Maynard. Feel free to introduce who you are, where you're from, and the role you play at KSU. And that's it. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I'm Tara Maynard, and I work at Kentucky State University as a research assistant. Currently, we're going to kind of get into some of the research that I'm working on a little bit as I tell you our story. I kind of wanted to point out something that Caitlin and Ian were talking about, the Kentucky Watershed Watch. I did volunteer with them a few years ago. Actually, it's been like 9 years ago. And it's such a wonderful opportunity. You know, you're kind of a civil scientist getting out there, collecting the data that goes into a larger database. And you get to collect these samples in areas and watersheds that directly can affect you. So it's really cool that they have this opportunity and you all could do that. Now I'm going to share my screen. Just give me one moment here. Hey, Jeremy.
Co-host, you can maybe try now as a co-host.
Yeah, let me see here. All right, there we go. I hope you all can see my screen as we are going along. Jeremy, can you see my screen?
Yep, very clearly, thanks.
Fantastic. So today I kind of wanted to give an overview of, you know, we've been talking about GIS, and GIS is Geographic Information Systems. And what Esri is kind of a software company that has put together these different apps and web maps that we all can have access to within Esri's platform, right? So one of the things that I want to show you is story maps, and then we're going to talk about our surveys. So we're going to do Esri apps, story maps is survey 1, 2, 3. It's going to be a short introduction to survey creation and using survey 1, 2, 3. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Pike County, raised here, and I currently reside here. I went to Eastern Kentucky University, where I received a bachelor's degree in geology. But while I was also there, I got curious about this geospatial technology, and I wanted to learn more about that. And I ended up taking multiple classes, staying a little longer than I had originally planned, but I was able to obtain my GIS cert. And through that cert in my geology, I was able to get an internship which is what DeAndre was talking about, something that's important to gain this experience. And I worked in, I hope you all know, I think you should, the Daniel Boone National Forest. And that was with the Forest Service. And there, I kind of did a little bit of everything. I was in charge of doing geospatial technologies and field applications. So we'll get into that a little bit with surveys. And I would create these surveys in the office, and then I got to go out and hike and collect this data and bring it back to the office, and I could analyze it, and I could show, you know, where we were from or where we collected this data at in a spatial format and visual, so I could share with my coworkers and other organizations. And from there, you know, I worked in the corporate for a little bit, and then it just wasn't for me. And I started at Kentucky State University working with Dr. Gawali. And our interest in our research, at least, is in reclaimed mine lands. I'm not sure if you all have heard of that before, but basically what it is land that has been mined for coal in particular in Eastern Kentucky. We were wanting to look at these surface mines. They've been reclamated, so they've been planted back with vegetation. They're trying to restore that land back to what it was before they had mined it. And now we have this interest in what can we do with this land? Who are the stakeholders in this land? And if we do utilize this land, what's it going to be good for? Is it going to be used for economic development and going back to the community and the people? So these were a couple of questions that we needed to ask ourselves. And so one of the first things I wanted to look at was, where are all the mines in Kentucky? If you look here at the legend, I mean, these are all the mines. These are also historic mines as well. And then I was like, well, what mines are even active right now? And so all of these dots that are over here, and you can see on the legend, these are all the active mines in Kentucky. That's not it. I needed to learn a little bit more. So here we have, there it is. We have all the underground mines in Kentucky. That wasn't quite what I was curious about. So these are all the surface mines. And finally, I really wanted to see what mines were active mines and surface mines. And this right here, what we're using right now, how I'm presenting this to you is an application in Esri called Story Maps. And I was able to add these maps in here to kind of help tell my story about my background and what current research that I'm working on, and to give you all a better visual and representation of the areas that we're concerned about or wanting to learn more about. Let's scroll on down our story map here. So why do you think surveys are even important? I know they're not always fun to do. Sometimes they're lengthy. Sometimes you may not even know why you're doing it. So here are some examples of the importance and why we would want to have these surveys. One that you all may be familiar with is a census survey. And the census population count, that's going to determine how many representatives each state will have in Congress for the next 10 years. So if our population grew, we would want another representative to represent Kentucky. It's also going to tell you how much federal funding the communities will receive. So if we need a new road or new repairs, we have a larger population of kids, so we may need more schools or more teachers. We need more housing and other programs. And then, so I was telling you a little bit about the reclaimed mine land. So we are developing and have developed a survey, and it's for the reclaimed surface mine landowners. We're going to ask questions that's going to pertain to their land and how they would like to use it, and what they really want to do with it. That way, KSU can develop different workshops, learning circles. We may be able to work with them on a grant. And so this is really going to help us be able to communicate with the communities of Eastern Kentucky and other places in Kentucky as well. And then Something else I kind of just added in here because I forgot about it, is environmental assessments and reporting. And that is important for surveys such as what Ian and Caitlin were showing, the environmental assessments. You have this paper copy and you can take that out in the field and, you can write on that, or you can develop a survey like this. And you guys may have not got to see this yet, but I'm going to give you a little assignment. And these are different surveys that you can create. So one was, I wanted to ask you all some about the technologies. Have you used Google Maps or Google Earth Engine? These are, if you may not think about it this way, but it is a geospatial technology. Even your GPS is a geospatial technology. The routes that you take, you're plugging in this data and it's spitting out different routes that you can take all in kind of real time. And this is the capabilities that geospatial technology has. It really helps us in the long run. And we're going to look on the other side. I just wanted to get you kind of familiar with what these look like. You all are going to do one on sustainable fishing and what that means. And again, guys, I'm not testing you on anything. I just want you to be able to see the different capabilities and different surveys or questionnaires that you can utilize in Survey 123.
Yeah, feel free to drop those links in the chat, and then participants, if you'd like, you're free to follow along and look at those surveys if you like, and certainly when she's finished up, if you could be sure to complete those, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, you guys can do it now or later. I may get you to do it a little later. So something else that I wanted to show you. Again, this is all within this one application on Story Maps that I'm presenting to you. I had the capability to put in this web map, which is from Esri's Living Atlas. And it's showing the different roads of cicadas. And we all know that cicadas are out right now. We can hear them, we can see them. And I wanted to show you something a little interesting here. Look at how localized all of this, the cicadas are in the United States. If we were to look at the facts on a paper, on just a piece of paper, it would be kind of hard to visualize. All right, we have this amount of cicadas in Kentucky, and then in Illinois, they're having a really bad breakout, and what that may affect, it can really affect the agricultural community. And this is something I really wanted to show you because, it's GIS, but this is more remote sensing. So this is imagery, and we've all played around in Google Maps, and we found our house. We can look at different land types. But this, I wanted to show what we can do here. So this is the Centennial Explorer. And what this is a web application that highlights some of the capabilities for accessing Centennial 2 imagery layers. And this is powered by ArcGIS. So ArcGIS is part of the Esri applications. And you can visualize our planet and understand how Earth has changed over time. And this is a little bit going on what Jeremy has been talking about, using drones with that imagery. We can look at the different types of vegetation that help. We can look at the geology. And so let's just take a look at what we can do just on this application, the Centennial Explorer. So I want to identify something. And I'm going to drop a point. And what it's going to do is giving me this spectral profile. And Jeremy has discussed a little bit about what spectral profiles are. I won't touch into that too much, but it's already showing us this line, and that is its profile, right? And over here, it's telling us that that's water. Well, how am I to be sure that that is water? There's kind of a lot going on here. We swipe, we kind of get this other base map. And we can kind of see a little easier and on another map that is water. And you can do this for bare earth, you can do this for vegetation, all kinds of different things. I'm just wanting to show you a little bit here. And again, I got this from the Living Atlas. And these are historic and current earthquakes that are going on in the world across the page. This one is for hurricanes and cyclones. And we can click on different attributes or different points here and see what their attributes are. It will let me. Let's go on to the next slide here. This is something that I also got from the Living Atlas, which is part of Esri's application, kind of their whole package deal, that we can pull in these maps and add to our story map. So what's going on out west right now? They're in a severe drought. And what is concerning about that is the increase of wildfires. And wildfires are detrimental to our environment and our people. And so this is updated every 7 days at least. So we can click on, okay, there we go. So this is a rock incident. This is wildfire. Okay, here we go. Acres burned. It's burned 100 acres. This is the Denison Fork incident. It's burned 0.5 acres. And we can go on and see these different details about the fires out mostly in our West Coast, but we also can look and they're all over. We can go down to Florida, 712 acres. So again, this is just to show you that you can add these different maps from Esri's platform and use it in your story map. So right now, I kind of just want to show you what it looks like on the creation side of it. And we're going to use Survey 123 and Story Maps to do so. So I'm going to sign him in here real quick. And this is what I was talking about. So what I'm on right now is called ArcGIS Online. And we're going to go right here, and it's showing you all of these different apps and the hub. You can kind of make your own web page, something similar to story maps, because what I was showing you to give my presentation is it almost looks very similar to a web page. So I'm going to go into Survey 123 and show you how easy it is to create a survey. Let's click on New Survey. And you can go in and you can use a template. So for example, if someone already has created a biological assessment that they need to take out into the field, and they just want to use that, then they can pull up a template. This is Survey 123 Connect, and its interface is kind of more like you would see in Excel. But we want to do our start from scratch in the online version. Type our name. Let's just do SAP. And let's create our survey. Now, you see it has, your survey is going to be presented here on the left, but you already have all of these choices on this right-hand side. So we're just going to pull in a multiple choice. Okay, over here on the right-hand side, we can put, what is your favorite? We'll just put, what is your favorite color? And you can give a hint here. You can tell someone how you want them to answer it. So tell us what your favorite color is. And then you can give choices. If you only want them to pick from, let's say, 3 choices, blue, red, and green, then we can do so. And you can make someone answer this question. So before that they're able to submit, they would have to answer this question. And then let's save that. And then let's preview it. Okay. So something else I want to show you. I want to show you the Living Atlas. And this is where I was taking some of the other maps that have already been created and pulling into my story map to give examples and to show you all. And there's all kinds of different maps that you can open up and you can learn about. Let's do this. So the example that I gave you in the story maps was the active hurricanes and cyclones. All I did was I pulled it from here and put in my story map. I didn't have to go back and recreate this map that is going to detail all historic hurricanes and cyclones. All I needed to do was go in here and get this feature layer that Esri has already created. You can go in and you can get a daily world image, the centennial. I'm trying to find one that's a little more attractive to you all. But right now, I kind of wanted to see if we had any questions or take a pause for a second. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, feel free to put your any questions that you have in the chat. I think we've just been mostly following along and checking these out, Ms. Maynard.
Okay. I'm trying to get back to I want to get back to our story map here. Okay. So I've showed you kind of our ArcGIS Online, and that is where you can go in and you can start from scratch. You can have a story map that you want to tell your story. You want to talk about yourself or something that you feel is important, such as environmental assessment, or for my case, reclaimed mine lands. And it kind of just helps you better tell your story and gives your audience more of a visual. You can tell multiple stories that creates connections through your story map. You can use web services, you can put in different web links, and then you can also put other story maps inside of it. And so basically it's a visual interpretation with maps that help you tell your story. It's pretty intuitive. All of the applications you can kind of, go in and teach yourself. But the other cool thing is that Esri has a learning platform that you can go in if you have an account and take different classes on using these different maps in your story. So it will help you along the way to better learn and understand, how you're doing it as you go along. Now, I also wanted to talk about, everyone was, kind of briefly talking about internships. And one of the ways that I found my internship was through USA Jobs. And I wasn't familiar with it when I was in college and an undergrad. But I've been on there recently just to kind of see, and there's a lot of opportunities, even for high schoolers, that for extra help. And, these are paid internships. Some of them are not, but you are already getting out there and gaining experience and something that you want to learn about. And this right down here is the grant I'm working on. strengthening research and teaching capacity by studying interrelationships and disruptions in landscape change and ecosystem functions in Kentucky. Very lengthy, but that is a grant that is helping me work out here in Eastern Kentucky and kind of give back to my community. So, you know, this is that was the end of my presentation. Feel free to ask me anything. I hope I wasn't too confusing. This is my first time doing the SAP program, so bear with me.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you very much. So that's a really interesting technology. And next month during the GIS day, we're gonna kind of bring this presentation back and in the form of a hands-on activity where some of the data that we collect out at the EERC, we'll put that in a story map, and then that'll live on the web. So while she was sharing the tools, I was just sitting here thinking about the parallels with the other technology. You know, it was just a little while ago where web developers were some of the highest paid people in technology, and now like StoryMap as one of its free features does the web development part for you, right? And makes it basically drag and drop. So that's technology making technology even easier. So if you remember about skill set, the learning curve's not very steep, to be able to create awesome websites, for example, where, like I said, just a short while ago, that was all the rage, and now maybe that's a skill that you just have to have because it's so accessible. So we don't really know, the world's changing so fast, but it's all about sharing what sharing the information. So she's been describing some of the research that we do broadly, but all of that is in the name of helping folks that live out in that region who are farming or managing the land or trying to reclaim land that was destroyed in the past. So thank you very much. We'll give you a virtual round of applause. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute, but that does bring us to the end of the AM session. So I'll just pause 1 second. A couple students that are still on, appreciate you hanging out to the end. This is the end of the AM session, and if I bring the schedule back up, we, let's see. At 12:30, Miss Patel is going to come on and talk about, they have a food safety lab, research center that they have inside of Atwood. And she's going to talk about pathogens, in the food system. She's going to share some of their research that they do, and she has a cool hands-on activity. So if you are going to participate in the PM session, it's very important that you're here right at 12:30, because the numbers that she starts with, she has to keep for the rest of the game. And it's very similar to an imposter type game. And then after, Janelle Hager and team, they're going to come on and introduce aquaponics. And she has two opportunities for getting involved with that. So we have a simple demonstration system that you can access, and she also has an activity where you can build your very own fully functioning system. So when we're talking about longer term projects for the students, this is another good opportunity of something you could do. Ms. Rogers, maybe this is something that speaks to that. And computer science folks, there's infinite opportunity to apply technology to this system. So I can't wait for that. So again, thank you very much. AM session is over, and we're going to start back at 12:30 at this link. So this link will stay live, and I'll be on here a few minutes before 12:30 if anybody wants to jump on and talk or question or anything. So that's it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you back at 12:30.